My name is Daniela. I'm 29 years old. I live alone while working in caregiving. The other day, my boyfriend of 4 years, Jameson, proposed to me. I was delighted, and without hesitation, I said yes. Jameson works as a doctor at the hospital run by his father. He's young, but highly regarded for his excellence. I was determined to support Jameson and was already thinking about our newlywed life. First, we decided to greet each other's parents, so Jameson and I were visiting my mother. I grew up in a single-parent household. My father passed away in an accident when I was very young. I was planning to live with my mother, even as an adult, because I was worried about her, but she said, "Now that you're an adult, be independent." So I moved out when I got a job. That's why it's been a long time since I last met her in person. My mother welcomed us with a smile. Jameson was initially awkward, but now he seems completely at ease and I feel relieved. "Oh, Jameson, you were so nervous until we came here." In response to my teasing words, my mother chuckled awkwardly and said, "Oh, is that so?" While Jameson hurriedly shook his head sideways. "I'm sorry. I was imagining my own parents, but I'm glad your mother is a kind person. Daniela, you grew up in a warm and lovely home, didn't you?" Jameson smiled, but he seemed a little lonely. "Well, thank you. I'm happy to hear you say that. Even after just talking a bit, I can tell that you're a kind-hearted person. Jameson, please take care of Daniela, okay?" she said with a small nod. "Thank you very much. I'll make her happy." Jameson's eyes welled up with tears as he nodded back in gratitude. Later, the three of us had dinner together, and then Jameson reluctantly left. As I washed the dishes, my mother came over and smiled happily. "Jameson is a good person. I can see how much he cares about you. Congratulations, Daniela." "Thank you, Mom." My heart was filled with warmth, and I savored the happiness. A few days after greeting my mother, it was now my turn to visit Jameson's parents with him. Contrary to previously laughing at Jameson for meeting the parents' jitters, today I was the one completely stiff, racked with anxiety. I was led to the room by Jameson, and three people greeted us: Jameson's father, mother, and his sister. If we get married, they will become my in-laws. Jameson's father wore an expensive-looking suit, while his mother and sister were dressed in flashy makeup and branded clothes. Perhaps due to her youth, his sister especially looked caked in heavy makeup, with fake eyelashes and a lot of blush. I was overwhelmed by the air of affluence surrounding the three, but Jameson gently patted my back out of sight. Thanks to that, my nervousness eased, and I greeted them. "My name is Daniela. Thank you for taking the time today." Prompted by my mother-in-law, Jameson and I sat side by side on the sofa. Jameson's father spoke with a stern expression. "I believe you've heard from Jameson, but we run a hospital. I am the director, and my wife is a sophisticated and elegant housewife. And our daughter is a promising talent who has already secured a job at a major company. Our family background is excellent." It was more like boasting than a greeting, and it caught me off guard. Furthermore, his father's talks about his excellence as a doctor and the pride in the furnishings displayed in the room made the conversation drag on. Then, the mother and sister joined in with their own boasts, making it even more interminable. I had been trying to maintain a smile all along, but I could already feel the muscles in my face protesting. Daniela, was it? May I ask what kind of work you do?" Finally, my mother-in-law posed a question, and I felt a sense of relief in my heart. Yes, I work in caregiving." As I answered, Jameson's father let out a sigh. "Caregiving. Isn't that a menial job? Are you trying to appeal to us? letting us know that you could take care of us in our old age? Menial job? I was at a loss for words, and my mother-in-law frowned and shook her head. My goodness, how rude of you. You're clearly aiming to marry into this family for the money, aren't you? What do you think someone like you would do to take care of us in our old age? I would trust hired help over someone like you. Mama's got a point. My mother-in-law and sister-in-law laughed, and my father-in-law joined in. Of course, I was joking. Who would have thought you would be in a caregiving profession? The words and actions of my new family left me stunned. I couldn't understand the nerve of my in-laws openly mocking me. My heart was filled with confusion rather than anger. As my smile faded, my sister-in-law grinned and looked at me. Jameson clenched his fist on his knee, trembling. Jameson, couldn't you find someone better? Considering your inherent shortcomings, you should have chosen a marriage partner who considered our family, even if it meant fully utilizing your profession as a doctor. Agreeing with the father-in-law's comments, the sister-in-law chimed in. That's right. At least they should have been highly educated or beautiful. Jameson, who had been looking down the whole time, suddenly lifted his head. I feel relieved only when I'm with Daniela. She always stays by my side, smiling gently. That won't bring in a single yen of profit. Really, what kind of naive nonsense are you spouting? Jameson, who was desperately defending me, was completely denied by his father. In the end, Jameson bowed his head and fell silent. Well, I wouldn't mind meeting her parents. Gotta maintain appearances, eh? I'll let Jameson know a convenient date later. The father-in-law and mother-in-law stood up and left. The three of us, me, Jameson, and his sister, were left behind. What are you spacing out for? It means you should leave today, she said with a grin, her chin resting on her hand. My emotions, that I had pushed deep down to the pit of my stomach, started boiling up, and my body temperature rose instantly. What was this time all about? My head felt like it was about to explode from misery and frustration. It started with my greeting, but we couldn't even have a proper conversation. It was just the family boasting and insulting me. I left Jameson's family home. I noticed that Jameson was following me from behind, but I continued walking briskly without paying attention. I had bought new pumps for today, and perhaps because I was walking in such an emotional state, I ended up with blisters on my heels. Enough is enough. Daniela, I'm sorry. My family, they were so rude. Jameson caught up to me and apologized, and I stopped and said, I wasn't completely unprepared. I imagined that I might hear something unpleasant, but I never expected to be ridiculed to this extent. As my voice trembled, Jameson held my hand. My parents may say whatever they want, but I'll always be on your side. I was about to say something in response when I remembered Jameson trying to defend me earlier. Indeed, his dedication had come through clearly. I had heard that there are many husbands who can't protect their wives from their family's snide remarks or harassment. And Jameson had shared with me that he had grown up under various restraints to meet his parents' expectations, and he hadn't felt much parental love, particularly compared to his sister. Knowing that, it may have been one small act of bravery, but I was still glad that he tried to stand up for me. Well, there's nothing we can do. Let's look at things in the long run. I teased a bit, but I didn't let go of my anger. Thank you. I'll protect you properly this time. Jameson hugged me. Hey, can you stop right in the middle of the road? There weren't many people passing by, but the stairs were painful. But it didn't feel unpleasant. Jameson is still a bit unreliable, but I'll believe in him. And I'll do my best to protect Jameson from my new family as well. Several weeks later, the day of the meeting between the two families arrived. The venue was a private room in a restaurant arranged by Jameson. After greeting my in-laws the first time, my mother had called me on the phone and asked how it went, but I could only say, I didn't feel very welcome. I worried that if I told her the truth, my gentle mother might fall ill because of the shock. Don't worry, I'm here with you. I must have looked anxious. Even now, my mother is encouraging me. But I've decided to trust Jameson and I need to stay strong. With renewed determination, we were guided to the private room by the waiter, and my mother and I came face to face with Jameson and his family. My in-laws seemed greatly surprised by the fact that I come from a single-parent household. They probably deliberately exaggerated their reactions, because, as Jameson had told me, they were already informed that I come from a single-parent household on the day I came to greet them. Or maybe they were too desperate to boast about themselves and had forgotten about it. Oh, you're a single mother, so what do you do for a living? Well, I'm self-employed. In response to my mother's words, the entire family-in-law laughed, clearly mocking us. Not only poor, but also from a single-parent household, huh? As a self-employed woman, she can't be making much money. Well, he must have had a lousy education. Especially the father-in-law seemed to hold the belief that a single-parent household equals a lack of education, and he denied me and my mother vehemently. As for Jameson, he continued to look down and remain silent. I have attended university, and I pride myself on having common sense like any other person. All of this is thanks to my mother, who worked hard to raise me. My counter-argument was negated by the crude laughter of my sister-in-law. A single-parent household with a self-employed mother? So you must have been really poor. Even if you graduated from university, the fact that you don't work for a major corporation means you're still poor. It's obvious that you're trying to seduce my brother and marry into wealth. Well, you shouldn't say such rude things. It's disrespectful. The mother-in-law and sister-in-law chuckled together. Jameson seemed like he wanted to say something, but he remained silent as usual, without uttering a word. Is it really impossible for us to get married? Perhaps I should leave before my mother gets hurt any further. As I glanced at her in worry, my mother continued to smile calmly, as always. Taking advantage of my mother's silence, the overly confident sister-in-law continued to speak. Hey, Jameson, seriously, it's not too late to stop marrying Danielle, you know. You should bring someone who's smart, beautiful woman, who's good at her job, like her. Saying that, she turned her phone screen to us, which displayed a photo of her and a beautiful woman, who appeared slightly older, presumably her friend. Who is this? In response to my mother's question, she answered proudly. This person is the head of the personnel department at a major corporation. She's Mama's relative, and to me, she's like an older sister. Thanks to this person's request to the head of the personnel department, I was able to secure a job. So, it's a case of nepotism, huh? As I was bewildered by my sister-in-law, my mother nodded in understanding. I see. I understand now. I know why both the head of the personnel department and the section chief recommended you for the job. I thought they had high expectations for you, but it seems I was mistaken. The head and the section chief will definitely need to be properly reprimanded. For a moment, the room fell silent, and my sister-in-law looked perplexed and clueless. My mother let out a small laugh. I was also present during your final interview, but did you forget? Finally understanding everything, My sister-in-law's face turned pale under the heavy makeup. Ma'am. Upon hearing these words from my sister-in-law, my in-laws and Jameson had a startled change in expression. My mother had inherited the company from my grandfather when I was still young, and now she's the female CEO of a major corporation. And by the way, Jameson had known that my mother was a CEO for some time, but he didn't know that she was the CEO of the company where my sister-in-law received a job offer. That's a terrifying coincidence. I'm terribly sorry. I didn't know you were the CEO of my daughter's company. My mother and sister-in-law immediately changed their arrogant attitudes and began apologizing frantically. Their faces turned pale. However, my father-in-law was angry, saying, "Don't apologize." Upon witnessing this turn of events, I understood the reason why my mother chose the words self-employed to describe her profession. I'm glad, from the bottom of my heart, that I didn't say anything unnecessary. But if Daniela and Jameson get married, my daughter will become your family, so there shouldn't be any problem, right? Please, my daughter has failed multiple job entrance exams. My mother frowned at my mother-in-law, who was desperately making excuses. It seems your daughter lacks the bare minimum morals as a person. I don't think such a person is suitable for our company, and I do not approve of a job obtained through connections. Therefore, I will withdraw the job offer for your daughter. It was a moment when my usually gentle mother appeared different, revealing her dignified stance as the CEO. My mother glanced briefly at Jameson and continued. I wonder if it was a mistake to entrust my daughter to you? Jameson's eyes widened, and bowing his head in shame, he apologized to me and my mother. I apologize deeply for the disrespectful things my family said to you and Daniela. Daniela, I'm truly sorry for being so pathetic, even after making a promise. Then he lifted his head and said, I've been in a relationship with Daniela for 4 years, and I've been saved by her smile and kindness countless times. I truly want to be with Daniela for the rest of my life. I've always obeyed my father and mother, but now I've awakened. I will cut ties with my family and cherish Daniela and you. I could feel the anxiety that remained within me flowing away with tears. My mother smiled, satisfied with Jameson's words. The suddenly revoked job offer from my sister-in-law and Jameson's declaration as their heir to cut ties with them threw my in-laws into a panic. My mother-in-law pleaded with tears to reconsider, but Jameson shook his head. My father-in-law also tried to pressure him, saying, You'll regret it. But Jameson's determination remained unshaken. My angry father-in-law spat out. Do as you please. We don't need you to inherit our hospital. Your sister will wed a new heir. Now that you've cut ties with us, even if you regret it later, you will never enter our house again. Surprisingly, my father-in-law accepted the disownment quite easily, which surprised me. But perhaps he was much too proud to ask his son to stay. Besides, a woman CEO is nothing good. It's bound to fail sooner or later. I followed my mother's and Jameson's example and spoke firmly. What era do you think we're in with such gender inequality? Since taking over the company, my mother has worked incredibly hard as both a CEO and a mother. I'm proud of my mother, and you have no right to belittle her. My father-in-law snorted, but lacked composure in his expression. It was clear he was putting on a strong front. Such impudence from a little girl. Because of you, Jameson's life is ruined. If you don't do as I say, it's your own fault. I heard Jameson sigh heavily beside me. I thought the family attacked and belittled me and my mother during the reading simply because of their personalities, but perhaps it was also to manipulate Jameson. The value of Jameson's life should be determined by Jameson himself. Please stop trying to control him any further. My father-in-law glared at me with hatred. Then he pulled up my slumping mother-in-law and sister-in-law, and, like a typical villain, he spat out, "Remember this," and left the room. Silence returned to the room, and I looked at Jameson beside me. But still, is he really not going to regret cutting ties with them? Jameson smiled as if understanding my feelings, and tightly held my hand. Afterward, Jameson became the adopted son-in-law of our family, and cut ties with his parents' house. My in-laws tried to arrange several meetings with doctors for my sister-in-law to secure an heir, but each time the prospective partners rejected her. They probably saw through her heavy makeup and vulgar personality. Or perhaps it was my in-laws' fault. At first, my sister-in-law was enthusiastic, but after several failed engagements, she mentally broke down and ultimately became a recluse. Furthermore, I heard that my current father-in-law's hospital is struggling, with barely any patients. The patients only came because of Jameson's excellence as a doctor to begin with, so I think it's only natural. It turns out my in-laws were the ones crying. On the other hand, Jameson found a job at a distant hospital, and I decided to go with him. Although I had to move away from my mother, we'll still keep in touch, through video calls, so I don't feel lonely. What a great age we live in. If we have children someday, I want to raise them with love, taking my in-laws as a negative example.